Now, joining me live is Dr. David Adler, who's the president of the Australian Jewish Association and a columnist with The Spectator Australia. Well, David, great to see you. The Israeli government collapsed last night. You better tell us what has happened. The government's only been in place 12 months. Suddenly it's fallen over.
Well, you've got to understand that this was a government formed as a coalition between 8 groups, quite disparate groups, from the right through to the radical left and even the Islamists. And the reason the government was formed was essentially these were the people who found the previous Prime Minister, Bibi Netanyahu, unacceptable. So this was really an anti-Bibi coalition.
It's Trump, isn't it? It's the same thing. Trump's
Very
unacceptable. Yeah, Bibi was unacceptable. Great Prime Minister, by the way, Benjamin Netanyahu. We met him here in Sydney. He was terrific. But carry on.
And obviously the values within the group varied considerably and tensions became more and more. In order to try to hold it together, Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, who comes from a party called Yamina, which actually means right, politically right, he was seen as making more and more compromises of his values, and it upset a lot of people, and a couple started to leave the coalition. It was only just marginally a majority, and they failed to pass some essential legislation, and hence the end.
Yeah. So so tell me, what does this mean going forward?
Well, what it means going forward is that Israel faces another national election, the 5th in 4 years. Now, although that's problematic in some respects, it needs to be observed that within the Middle East, normally changes of power are violent at the point of a gun. Here in Israel, it's done by voting, by ballot. And we had, as I see you put on the screen, dancing in the street from some people who were very happy with the result. And there will be a democratic transition. And hopefully they'll come up with a more stable government, but that remains to be seen.
Right, okay, we shall see. Now tell us, here in Australia, the new Labor government, last week, they kind of made noises slightly supporting a new statement, but not supporting a new statement. Tell us what happened last week and your reaction to the Labor government's moves.
Well, this issue arose out of an initiative in the United Nations Human Rights Council, which decided to put in place a permanent commission of inquiry to investigate alleged human rights breaches by Israel. Now, on the whole planet, there is only one country which is subject to that process. And there was an objection by a collection of 22 countries, Israel plus 21 allies, which did not include Australia. Normally you would expect Australia to join countries like the United States, the United Kingdom and Canada. And although the Australian representative made a statement critical of what happened in the UN, the fact that Australia failed to join with other allies for a joint statement is, in our view, a significant shift in policy. Australia should have been there, should have stood and be counted, but regrettably did not. So we've called it out as both significant and wrong. And I think people need to know that already within weeks of being elected, Australia has actually moved, at least from a diplomatic perspective, in its position with regard to Israel in supporting the only democracy in the Middle East. And I think that's regrettable and we object to it.